Hello and welcome to episode 50 of the Epic Classroom Podcast. My name is Trevor Muir and I like to talk about teaching, whether it's stories and ideas from my own classrooms or lessons that I've learned from other educators. I love to explore ways to help students grow and thrive in school, but also for their educators to thrive as well. And so that's what this podcast is. Whatever you teach or however you serve in schools, how can you lead a more impactful, dynamic, meaningful, and epic classroom? We are back. I have not released a new podcast episode since May at the end of last school year. And I am recording this and releasing this in September. So we've had a few months off, and that's because summer is busy and fun, and it's a whole lot of things that did not create a ton of space for making podcasts. But now we're into this new season, and this is just such a fun time for me personally to just settle in and start creating more and making more stuff and thinking deeply about the things I like to think deeply about. And as I said in my little intro, I love thinking about school. I love thinking about how can we do it better? How can we make it into a story that students remember and cherish forever and ever? I've got two kids. Jack and Piper are their names, and they are in 3rd and 5th grade, and right now they are loving school. Like, school is like this joyous experience for them, and as their parent, I just there's nothing better than seeing your kids go away for 7.5 hours and come back saying, hey, I liked that 7.5 hours. Like, I liked the people I was around. I liked the challenges my teachers gave me. I like my teachers. It fills your heart with joy. You know, I started teaching. I entered this world of education before I had kids. And I did it for very similar reasons that I'm still in this world of education. It's because I believe in school. I believe how transformative it can be in a person's life, how important it is for a healthy, thriving society. School is important, and that's always been my motivation. But then you have your own kids, and it really makes you zoom back a bit. And you realize, like, man, this is a huge chunk of a human being's childhood, right? Like, I watch my kids go to school and they come back grown and different and better than they were when they started. Like, they're more skilled and more social, and they're harder workers, and it's like it's a formative experience. And they spend a lot of time there. We spend 13 years of our childhood in classrooms. And that makes me just think about, man, yeah, I'm here to make society better. I think that's what all educators are primarily here to do, is like, hey, we're trying to contribute in a way. But then when it becomes personal, you're like, oh, man, school is important for my own children. And that's really kind of shaped the way that I approach the work. My son is going to this school in our school district. It's a public school, but it's got this environmental bent to it. So it's an environmental school, and you have to apply to get in, and then the teachers there interview you, and they talk to your former teachers, and you have to take a little like assessment test, and they really want to make sure that you're going to be able to thrive in the school, because, as I said, it's an environmental school. The students spend a huge amount of time outside in this school. Like, there's actually a requirement for the students that every single day you have to go outside. You have to eat lunch outside every single day, unless it's below 0 degrees outside or there's a thunderstorm nearby. Otherwise, you're outside. If it's 5 degrees and spitting snow at you, you're outside eating lunch. If it's pouring rain but there's no thunder, you're outside eating lunch and having recess and exploring outside. That's the way the school is. And so they wanted to make sure if you go there, you know what you're getting into. And my little boy, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, or if you followed any of my work, our family, we like to be outside. You know, this last summer, while I wasn't recording a podcast, we were camping every weekend. We were going on hikes. Me and my son, he's 10 years old. We went on our first backpacking trip together. So just me and him loaded up our backpacks. I carried 75 pounds. He had 35 pounds, which is a lot for a 10-year-old. And we just disappeared into the wilderness for a couple days. And we camped in the woods, and we went fishing, and it was dirty, and it was sweaty, and it was was hard, and it was awesome. It was just perfection. It's like the type of thing that you never want to escape your memory. It's like as good as life gets. And so we're an outdoorsy family. We like to get out. And so we really were hoping and praying he'd get into this environmental program in our district. And he did. And he's been there for about a month now. And I got to tell you, friends, he loves it. It is like the most incredible experience to have your 10-year-old come home every single day and talk about how they love school. Not just put up with school, not just like school, or not just like parts of it, but loves it. Loves all of it. And he loves the fact that they have recesses where they're allowed to just go out into the woods and the fields and build forts out of sticks. He loves the lessons. He loves that he was given a guidebook about how to identify plants and trees. And that's his homework, is coming home and trying to figure, like taking what he's learned in the classroom and then trying to identify different trees in the woods by our house. He loves that he's getting to sketch and that he's learning math and how it integrates into nature. He's loving writing and reading out in nature. He loves that the teachers give them space to read, and they're reading books that are fit the themes of the Common Core. It's still public school, but they're saying, hey, instead of reading in a classroom, in a desk, in a contained space, a space that's not necessarily comfortable, go find a tree to lean your back against and read there, right? Hey, the teacher's going to do a read aloud. Let's get in a circle outside and read in a way that people have been told stories to for centuries and centuries. Like, let's do it like that. And he loves it. And it just reminds me that, like, yeah, my son loves being outside. So, like, he's definitely got that going for him. But everybody you talk to at that school, and I got to tell you this, every time I've ever taken students outside, there seems to be this appreciation for it, this appreciation for getting to go outdoors and breathe fresh air and feel the sunlight and hear the birds and smell the elements. Like, there's something about being outside that is good, that is natural, that is human. And I think sometimes there's something about being inside, contained, completely safe, which is good. Don't get me wrong, safety is good, but when you're in a contained space with very little variables, there's something that doesn't feel completely natural about that. And maybe this is just a hot take or an opinion, but I feel like we as humans are meant to be outside more than the common American life allows us to be outside, than the common modern life allows. It's often be in this office all day until you get to the end. And then what do you do when you get home to relieve some stress? You might go for a walk, right? You might go sit on your deck. You might go sit on your porch. You might go play in your neighborhood, because it's good to get outside. At school, it's so traditionally sit inside, be in this space, breathe the air-conditioned air, and then what is every student, or at least up until 5th grade, until it's taken away, what's every student's favorite thing about the school day? That's right, you already knew the answer. It's recess, right? Like anytime I ever ask anybody, anybody that has kids, when you ask your kids, what was your favorite thing at school today? The first answer is always recess. And then the second answer is almost always lunch. And then the third answer is gym. Those are the three most common responses. It's like, yeah, why do they love recess so much? Well, it's play-based, and us human beings love to play as well. But then it's outdoors. When my kids have, when there is a thunderstorm, my son, he did go to a completely traditional elementary school, and my daughter still goes there, and it's an amazing, brilliant school. But when they have a thunderstorm or a really bad snowstorm or whatever, and they can't go outside for recess, they have indoor recess. And I always ask them, how was recess, or how was indoor recess? And it's always like, not as fun. Even though it's still play-based, even though it's usually like, hey, you can still play, or you still have some free time, or you can still even be on, your Chromebook or tablet, it doesn't seem to have the same amount of joy as going outside. It's like, yeah, because being outside is human. It's good for us. And it turns out being outside helps us learn more. And there's loads of research that shows this. I mean, there's research that shows the benefits of vitamin D and what that does for our cognitive health. There's something about, our immune systems that's boosted by being out in the sun. There's the fresh air and what that does for our thinking and how it helps us just think more clearly. There's benefits to being outside. There's also just the joy that comes with it. There's a joy that comes with being outside. And so the long and short of it is that I think we need to find more ways to bring learning outside. And it doesn't all have to be environmentally based. I think sometimes it means instead of teaching it inside, we're teaching it outside because we like to be outside, right? Like one of my favorite things to do, when I was teaching. Well, I guess the first year I did this, I was teaching high school seniors. And, we do reading time. And these are students who had already tested. And they were just like biding their time a little bit. And so senior year is really fun because you have a little bit more freedom in what and how you teach. But then you also are fighting against some serious apathy and impatience and ready to get on beyond high school. And so we do choice reading time. So I'd allow my students to choose what they read, and we'd have sustained silent reading to start every single day. So we'd have 10 minutes of reading time every single day, no matter what. My other classes seemed to really like this time. They'd kind of get comfy and read, but the seniors were all a little bit more difficult to actually loosen up and enjoy this. And so one day I said, hey guys, we're going to go out to the courtyard, which is just a little space outside beyond my classroom. And we're just going to go sit on that little grass hill and we're going to read out there. And so we went out there and they brought their books and they got to lay in the grass and lay out in the sun and put their backs against the walls and backs against the trees. And we read, and it was no different, the format, than what we were going to do inside. We were going to read, and then we were going to talk about our reading, and then we're going to get on with the rest of class. And so we read outside, and then we went back inside, and there was a noticeable, probably measurable difference in the way students engaged in the rest of my class that day. They were loosened up. They were happy to be there. They liked being outside. And I think part of that is because they had some vitamin D pumping through their bloodstream. I think part of that is because they breathed fresh air. I think part of that is because they were a little bit more comfortable for 10 minutes. And I think also part of that is because they were trusted with the freedom to be outside. And so this is what we just started to do, is go out there. And then I started taking my other classes outside to read. And you know what happened? My students really started loving this time. And sometimes students would misbehave outside because when you're not in a contained space, it might be a little bit more difficult to manage. And I remember one time I took my freshmen outside to read, and one group, when I wasn't looking, were kind of knocking on another teacher's classroom window. And that teacher, of course, was not very happy with me and came and talked to me about it. And so I had to pull that freshman class. And I said to them, guys, you know my expectations when we go outside. So here's the thing. I want to keep doing this. I like reading outside too, and I know you do. If there is one more disturbance, we will not be reading outside for a while. Everybody understand? They said, we all understand. We went outside. There was a disturbance. And that was it for reading outside for that class for a couple weeks. And they were not happy about it. They were quite disappointed. And when we finally got to go outside again, they started managing each other. When those kids that would be knocking on windows, would even be tempted to do it, other groups would say, don't do it, because we don't want to lose this. And all of a sudden, it started managing itself. It started becoming something that they knew was a privilege and they didn't want to lose because they desperately wanted to go outside during the day. And this is high school, when kids mostly don't get to go outside during school. We do a weird thing where we say all right, 5th grade's over, no more recess. It's what? Why would you stop recess just because a kid's now 11 instead of 10? I don't understand. And so we take that away. And then when you all of a sudden get to simulate it in a different way, it's hey, we're not going to go outside and do hopscotch. We're going to go outside to read. Or, hey, I've got some direct instruction, a lecture. I might as well just tell it to you while we're outside and you're comfortable and you're getting some sun and fresh air. And all of a sudden, students are so much more receptive to it. So I want to share some activity ideas that you can do outside, but I wanted to throw that idea out there first, is that it doesn't necessarily have to be environmentally based. You don't have to be teaching an environmental school like my sons in order to take your students outside more. Instead, you just have to creatively think, how can I do what I would normally do in my classroom in an outdoor space? How can I create classroom management structures, some proactive classroom management, maybe having students sign an outdoor contract. You are signing off here that you agree to abide and behave by these norms and ground rules if we're going to go outside, and here are the consequences if you don't. So maybe it's creating kind of some proactive management systems to make sure it happens. But then just thinking, all right, we can go do this out there. How can we do it well? How can we make sure it doesn't disturb other people? So I think we can do that. But then also, I think there's other things that we can just add in and maybe figure out. I'm going to just share a bunch of ideas. I also wrote an article about this that's on my website, trevormuir.com/blog, and it's the latest article on there. It's just got a whole list of ideas, so feel free to go read it in more detail there. But I just want to read these ideas, and I would love for you to stretch your creative mind right now and think, how could I maybe tie some of this into my own classroom? So whatever content you teach, could any of this maybe transfer in any way? So for one, like a nature scavenger hunt, creating a list of natural items for students to find, whether it's leaves or rocks or flowers, depending on the level of your students. Maybe you're getting really specific. Maybe you're giving the Latin names of leaves and students have to go find those. Maybe it's a type of rock. Is it igneous or metamorphic, or is it sandstone or limestone? Maybe it's you have really young students. Hey, go find 3 different types of flowers or 3 different types of leaves. The idea is, hey, we're going to go find these things. We're going to go discover what's around our school, and then we're going to research it deeper. Maybe we'll bring it back to the classroom, and now we'll practice our research skills, or maybe we'll write about it. Maybe you create artwork around it. So a nature scavenger hunt. And maybe on that note, maybe you teach science class and you teach something like erosion. Maybe instead of hey, we're just going to read about erosion, maybe watch a video on erosion. What if we just went outside and found examples of erosion, and we made observations about it, and we wrote about it, and we did the same type of work, except now we get to go outside to experience it. Maybe you have students go out there and sketch nature. This is one of my favorite school supplies I've ever bought for one of my kids. My son was required to have a sketchbook, so we had to buy him a little sketchbook, and then he gets to go outside regularly, and they're sketching different things in nature. When they're learning about the parts of a plant, they're not just looking at sketches on the board. And I know I keep driving this point in, but the point is they get to go and find it and sketch it in person. And so learning observation skills, you could tie in your science content. Of course, you could tie in art, maybe even math. There's so many different geometric shapes to be found in nature. You could use small rulers and tape measures to measure and just there's so many different ways to explore it. So creatively think, how could I teach my content with sketching and observation? Speaking of math, this is something I didn't come up with, but my son's done it, and I went and looked into it further, and apparently lots of people do it. I love it. It's just simple. It's math relay races. Set up a relay race where students have to solve a math problem at a station that they go to. And once they solve it, they can move on to the next one. It's like a nice mix of competition and movement and also solving math, and it's and also fun. There's this fun element to it. And so math relay races. You could also have your students plant a garden. This is something when I go around and speak and I do project-based learning training with teachers. This is a project that often gets planned in my workshops that teachers love coming up with and kind of fleshing out, is having students plant a garden. Because to do that, we're going to have to create a budget. We're going to have to create a supply list. Maybe we'll have to write a persuasive grant to a greenhouse or an organization to raise money to fund it. Obviously, there's the work of going into a garden and creating a plan to take care of it. Maybe you have some type of big goal at the end of it. Hey, we're going to have this farmer's market where we're going to sell our produce to raise money so that we can fund the garden next time. Maybe they're donating all of the vegetables they grow or the flowers they grow to a cause. So maybe like a food pantry or a homeless shelter. Maybe it's ensuring that every kid in the school has access to fresh, healthy food. Whatever it is, have students do a garden. Think how many ways you could tie content into this. Could you if you teach social studies or history, could you talk about the agricultural revolution? If you teach math, could you talk about exponential growth? And if you teach science, obviously photosynthesis and plant growth and reproduction and cell growth. The sky's the limit. And so could you plant a garden? So look into that. Weather observation, having students observe and record weather, bird watching. Could students use a guidebook and try to identify different birds outside? Could you do science experiments outside? If we're talking about how certain surfaces absorb heat and some others don't absorb heat, could you actually go and demonstrate that outside? Could your students partake in environmental cleanup? Could they organize some type of event at the end of the month where you're trying to get as many people to show up and pick up garbage or trash around your school, and maybe they have to create marketing materials. Maybe they need to learn persuasive techniques to get people to come to this. Maybe they need to write speeches. I'm just going off the top of my head here. How many things could you tie into this? Create speeches to get other classmates to come to their environmental cleanup day. But those speeches are going to have logos, pathos, ethos. We're going to have to persuade people. We're going to have to be really strong and confident in our public speaking skills. We're going to maybe have to collaborate and do this together well. We're going to have to find really good data and research to convince people to come. And then we're going to go outside and do it, right? Like there's so many ways to tie in content to something that's good. It cleans up the school and it gets kids outside. And that's really what we're getting down to here. Is it about having fun? Yeah. I think school should have this fun element to it, and going outside is often fun. Can students learn more? Yes. Like I said, there's this joy that happens when you're outside, and there's something that happens to our bodies and to our minds when we're outside that encourages more growth and learning, and also our health. There's something good for our immune systems and our emotional and physical well-beings when we go outside more. And so I encourage you to find more ways to do that. And I know the weather isn't always great for it, but I have to say this. In Michigan, where I live, we have this saying that there's no bad weather, there's just bad clothing. That might not be completely true, but I don't know. What if you said to students, hey guys, tomorrow, rain or shine, we are going to go outside and do math relay races. So please make sure that you bring in a raincoat. Maybe you email parents and say, hey, tomorrow we're going to go outside and we're going to be looking for signs of erosion, but it looks like there's a 30% chance of rain. Can you please send your kids to school with a raincoat or an umbrella? Again, there's this fun and joy of getting to do that, and it's possible. It's possible to do this. So if you're an administrator listening right now, I encourage you to encourage your staff to go outside more. If you're a teacher listening to this, I encourage you to find more ways to tie it in and do it. Because, man, it is so much fun. I've seen my students just light up out there. I've seen my son light up about school in ways that I have never seen him light up before. And I think it's pretty special, so much so that I wanted to make a whole podcast on it. So anyway, good to be back in the podcast room. I am at the public library in the little town that I live, where they have this whole little podcast studio. So it's good to be back in here. I'm going to try to have much more regular episodes as we dive into more of these topics and find more things to talk about to make school more epic for our students. And when I say epic, I don't mean big and giant. I mean epic as in story. How do we create stories for our students that they are not going to forget anytime soon? And I think going outside with our students is a great setting for those stories to unfold. So anyway, thanks for listening. Hey, this last summer, while all this was going on, I should have made a whole podcast around it, but I didn't. Maybe we'll do it soon because I want to tell you more about it. I released a new book with one of my really good friends, Dr. John Spencer, called New Teacher Mindset. And it has been so fun to put out into the world. And so if you haven't checked out New Teacher Mindset yet, it is on Amazon, and we are really, really proud of it. So I'm going to do an episode soon and just tell you all about it. But yeah, go check that out. Also, I've gotten the opportunity to travel all over the country this past summer, getting to be with teachers all over the place. And I've got some really fun places coming up. I'll be in Phoenix a couple times, in Portland, Oregon. That's a big conference that is open to the public if you're interested. You can check out my website for more details. I'll be in Quebec City and New York City, all over the place. And if you are interested in me coming your way, feel free to shoot me an email at trevor@trevormuir.com or go to my website, trevormuir.com/speaking for more information on that. So anyway, friends, thanks for listening to the Epic Classroom Podcast. This has been episode 50.